What's up, everybody? I'm Justin Maytack, and I'm here with my sister, Melissa Mattack.
Hey, everybody.
And we are Room 51, where we talk all things board gaming. And today, we're joined by Jordan Schoenberger from Jordan Plays Blue.
Hi, everyone.
And today, we're talking about representation for children of color in board gaming. Right? And so, Jordan, since you are our guest, we normally like to let the guest kick it off.
Right. So I guess I'll introduce myself a little bit. If you don't know, my name's Jordan. I do Jordan Plays Blue on Instagram and YouTube. I just kind of review board games and stuff like that. But if you are watching the video, you might be able to see, or if you're listening to the podcast, you might not know, but I am a straight white man. And this is not necessarily a topic that you hear white guys talking about. I don't necessarily see myself as an expert in this field, in this area. However, I do have experience in it. My family in my home is multiracial. I am white. My wife is white, but 3 of our 4 children in our home are actually African American or mixed race. We have one. Oh, this is confusing.
You're good.
my family is a confusing thing to talk about. So my wife and I have been foster and adoptive parents for a number of years. We have fostered a ton of kids. We adopted 3 children, and we have one adopted daughter, or one birth daughter as well. One of our kids came to us as a teenager, and she doesn't live in the home anymore. So when I talk about having 4 kids but only 3 in the house, that's why, because one of them doesn't live with us anymore, and that's the natural state of things when you get to a certain age. So that was things worked out okay there. But one of my children is African American. My son is mixed. He's African American, actually Puerto Rican, and white. So he's got a little bit of everything. He can, he can pass in certain areas depending on where he is. He can pass as a lot of different types of races. My daughter, however, can't. She is African American. She looks black through and through. And then my other daughter's super white. She's pale, just like me. So this is something that I pay attention a lot to. I know I've posted about it on a couple of different Facebook groups, just about how it's important that, it's not just, it's important for people who are in groups, minority type groups, to see themselves in order to feel welcome and included in that group. That whenever you are in a minority group, and I don't know if oppressed or suppressed are the right terms for that, but if you're in a group that is not the majority, it is important to be explicitly welcoming of those folks, because otherwise it's often assumed that they're not. And so I think that is an issue in board gaming, and I think it's getting better. And I think there's enough right now. There's a lot of vocaling. People being vocal about this, and I think that's really important. I just did an interview with Taniya Walker. She's the art director at Jelly Bean Games. I interviewed her over my Instagram page, and she's a white lady. She works in Australia, or lives in Australia, and is an artist. And I was playing one of her games, and if you're watching this on video, I was playing Village Pillage, which is just a little card game. It's not, there's not a ton to it. But one of the things I asked her about, I was like, why this game is about like a medieval town. Why is it so, why are there so many Black people living in this town, and Asian people living in this town, and men and women and all sorts of things? And she's like, well, she when she's coming at art, and she did the same thing with Lady and the Tiger, only in that game it was all ladies, because it's literally in the title. It's about a short story. They all have to be women for it to make sense. But there's Black women, there's white women, there's Asian women, there's all sorts of different types of women in the book. Even the tigers are different colors, And she sees it as whenever you walk outside and you're in a city in a diverse area, what do you see around you? And she believes that those are the people that would be, she wants to play her games. She wants, if you're walking down the street, she wants you to play her game. She wants you to play your game. She wants you to play her game. And she wants the game to look like the people who are playing it, regardless of historical accuracy, because frankly, I don't know how important that is to most people. I think it's important to be able to see yourself in the game more so than it is to kind of put yourself in that world. Village Pillage is not building a world. You are not, there is not a town in the world that is trading turnips as resources and attacking neighboring, like this is a fantasy type scenario. So why not just build on that and make it look, look like you are projecting what you want the people playing it to look like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think especially children don't care about those things either, like how historically
Right.
accurate it is.
Yeah, and I was looking before we got on. I was looking at my daughter's game shelves, and I was trying to pull off a game like the Valley of the Vikings game by Haba. I was like, I know one of these Vikings is black, and I pulled it off, and I was like, none of these Vikings are black. Which makes sense in a game about Vikings. Obviously, like they weren't African American, they weren't black, they weren't Jamaican, they weren't Puerto Rican. They were from Scandinavia, so they're going to look like me, and that's just how that is in that part of the world. But it is important for kids games, and I think a lot of times in kids games, the way they get around it is using animals, and I think a lot of other games do. If you think about like I don't know, Bunny Kingdom, or these animals that there are these games that are using animals instead of people. It's a way for them to kind of get around that diversity type thing. It also it's interesting because you can make like Bunny Kingdom. You could have made like Nazi Germany. Like why not? You could have done something like that. But they made it bunnies instead, kind of going to make it more lighthearted, and kind of you can make some weird things here and there and make it work for the theme and the mechanics that are in the game. But I think that, I don't know, it just feels cheap whenever you're going to throw animals in something instead of humans, because animals aren't playing your game, humans are playing your game. And whenever we are doing something, like whenever we're reading a book or we see a billboard, like there was a billboard by my house recently that was Mae Jepsen. I don't know if you guys know, or Jameson. Mae Jameson. I don't know if you know who she is, but she was the first African-American astronaut that went into space, which is cool because one of my daughters is named May, who happens to be the white daughter.
Right.
But so that's fun because her name is May, and there aren't a lot of people named May. So that was fun. But then also she's black, and so my other daughter, I'm like, Maya, look, Mae Jemison is black, and she was an astronaut, and she got to do these cool things. And she gets to see herself now in who that person is on that billboard. And it's important for us to be able to find that around us and see yourself. When you see yourself in the world around you, it makes you feel like you belong in the world around you. If everything around you is different than the world, than what you look like, it makes you feel like an outsider, and it makes you feel like a stranger in that world. So it's important for us to, we are constantly with our kids because both parents are white in our house. All the kids' grandparents are white. So it's important for us to find those people, to find those things around us that are allowing us to connect to, the different parts of the world around us.
Right. Yeah. That Vikings game that you mentioned, by the way, that's a children's Vikings game, right?
It is. Yeah.
So for me, I understand why you would have a Vikings game where everybody's white, but I think for a children's game, totally acceptable and not acceptable. I think it should almost be encouraged, like just make it a diverse cast of Vikings. For a game like 870 Vikings by Academy Games, where it's meant to be historical and educational, then I think keep it historical, right? And I think that's where it's kind of like that, leave the history to the historical games, to games where you have a very loose, like, yeah, these people existed in history. Yeah. Who cares? Do what you want. It's a kid's game.
It's true. And I think it comes down to what the game is trying to achieve. And I think like Academy Games or GMT, like those are companies that are trying to do things that are historically accurate. It is clear that whenever they're building their rule set, whenever they're getting their components together, they're trying to follow things to a certain letter. But a game like Dead Reckoning is on Kickstarter right now. It's about pirates, all right? I don't know if a lot of people noticed. There's one pirate on the cover, and he's black. I don't think there's going to necessarily be outrage online because they included the cover has a black pirate on it. Because that is important for people to see, that when I grow up, I could be a pirate too. That's important for people, for Black kids to see, but it's not something that is negatively affecting people for them to be outraged about. That is something that honestly, most white people aren't going to notice that there's a black person on the cover of Dead Reckoning. But it's one of the first things I noticed because it's something in my family is very important for us to be able to see as we're exploring things, as we're looking at games. The cover of Village Pillage, I'm holding it up to a camera that you listening to the podcast can't see. Half the characters here aren't white. Actually, I would say one of them is Caucasian or white. On the cover of the box, that. Most people who know about Village Pillage have never played Village. They just know what it looks like or whatever, but they know the box. And it's important for that to be out there. But if you're looking at a game like, I don't know, Blood Rage, right? Like that is a Vikings game, right?
Yeah.
But it's not historically accurate, So if one of the characters was black, would anybody know? People wouldn't notice or people wouldn't care. And if they would bring up historical accuracy, in a game like that, it doesn't matter if it's historically accurate. Because
absolutely.
Those huge miniature creature things with stuff hanging off of them, that's not historically accurate either. It's like building off of like mythology and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not, So I think sometimes it feels like a bit of a red herring or something when somebody brings up historical accuracy in games. And I think it's true, but I think for most games, it's not something that is going to, it can only positively affect things. It is not taking away the experience of most people, but by it being left out, like by diversity and inclusion being left out of games, it is removing people from the game, but it's not removing the majority from the game. If that makes any sense to you guys.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think one thing that you were even touching on in terms of, and you said this a little bit earlier in terms of belonging and seeing yourself. I think it's so important super important with children because growing up, and I'm coming from a mental health counseling background, so growing up in a way where you're not seeing yourself as the hero and you're not seeing yourself as the main character, the one that people care about, even the average Joe kind of character, right? Like you're not even seeing yourself as that. That is damaging, and it takes years and years of processing to undo that sort of thing, especially growing up as a child where you're not seeing yourself and not feeling as though you belong. And one thing I'm actually curious about, I know May plays board games because I see her on your stuff, but do your other children play board games as well?
Yeah, so their age, so my oldest daughter, who doesn't live at the home with us, she will play some games with us. She enjoys card games, especially Spades and Lost Cities. Those are her two games that we'll play. We play a lot of cards with her. She really enjoys that. My two youngest are 5 and 3, and so they are. They also, I will say, they do have some special needs, and so it is difficult for them to sit for a long period of time and play a game. But my one daughter did pull out a Haba game that had unicorns in it because she loves unicorns, and she set it up, she didn't want to play by the rules, but we played a game where we just rolled the dice and moved along the board and collected the gems or whatever, which, to be fair, is pretty close to the rules.
Okay.
But she wanted to play this game. She loves unicorns. She wanted to do it. She's really big into making up games right now. She loves carrying around Pokemon cards and pretending that she's playing with them. But we're not to the point where we're fully playing games yet. But she's super observant. Like if we were playing a game and one of the characters was black, she would point that out. And she'd be like, they have brown skin like me. Like she is hyper vigilant about all of that. And whether that's, because her parents are white or she lives in our type of home, I mean, that's probably attributing a lot to that. You don't usually come out the womb with those kind of, paying attention to all of that stuff so vigilantly. But my youngest son, he is nowhere near able to sit down and play a game. I'm hopeful, but we're not to that point yet. But it is, she does, my middle daughter, she does notice things. Whenever we're playing games, whenever we're watching TV. We were playing a game about rabbits the other day, actually, and she wanted to be the brown rabbit because the brown rabbit had its fur was the same color as her skin, and that, it was fine. It, like, we said sure, and she did it, and that's the connection she made in that game. It was about rabbits. To be fair, the theme makes sense about rabbits. I'm not going to disparage this game for not including people because it has rabbits. Rabbits make sense for that game. But the fact that the rabbits were rabbit colors. They were black, white, gray, and brown. But she picked the brown one because she felt the brown one looked more like her, And so, that's just the little things. And so whenever I know in different Facebook groups, somebody will post something like, hey, can you guys think of a board game that has black characters in it? And some people will comment, they're like, I don't pay attention to the black. I don't pay attention to the color of the characters, or I don't know what any of the color characters do. I only care about the mechanics. And I think that might be true. Like, I'm not going to say that what you're saying is not what you experience, but I think you need to make sure you check yourself and the privilege that you have, that you're able to come from a place where you aren't looking for yourself places, because it is always, you can always assume that you will be present there. Yeah. And so I think there's a ton of privilege there, and something that we need to be very aware of as a board game community, because we can only do better in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I have to think about ever. And it actually kind of goes back to one of the very early comments you made about we have to be explicitly welcoming. It has to be very explicit. And I think representation in the games that we're playing is probably one of the most explicit ways of saying you're welcome at that table, kind of thing.
Exactly. And it's another reason why churches or doctors' offices or therapist offices might have a rainbow flag on their door, or they might have a human rights campaign equal sign on their door, because those might be areas that LGBT folks have felt hurt in church spaces, at doctor's appointments, at therapy appointments, in those spaces where they are very vulnerable. They may have felt hurt in those spaces. And so it's important for spaces like that, who want to be welcoming, to be explicitly welcoming, because it is probably going to be assumed otherwise. And so I think it's the same way, and it should be the same way in board gaming, because we are the majority. I've been to conventions, I've been online, I've been in board game circles for a number of years. It's mostly white. It's mostly dudes. I think most of the stereotypes about, like, the comic book guy from Simpsons, I think it's mostly true. Like, it comes from a place of truth. I'm not going to say it's mostly true. All three of us, none of us are that guy. So, it's coming from some truth. And I think it's important for us to break down those stereotypes and show more interest in people of different backgrounds, definitely.
I think that one of the biggest things too is that I feel like children are sort of criminally overlooked, um, just across the board.
Mhm.
Um, but and like you were saying, where I think you said your daughter is so observant of when characters in the games look like her. It's like something that we don't even. Oh yeah, children, they won't notice. And it's like, yeah, they will. They'll notice. They're absolutely.
Yeah.
They are paying attention. And they're the ones who are the most susceptible to uh, that type of ingrained damage, right? It honestly, I would even go as far to say that it is it's a form of trauma, um, to not see yourself constantly, right? So yes, microcosm of board games, um, but it's still something that causes some sort of trauma. So when you say things like, and you brought up with people who feel, hey, I just pay attention to the mechanics, sure, okay, um, but maybe we should be a little more aware because you're hurting people, right? Like that is something you should be aware of. Like, oh, I didn't notice I had this like knife in this person's back. It's like, well, become aware of it because you're hurting someone. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks, if black folks are probably used to not seeing themselves in board games, and so it's it's I when they open up the game and they pull out the characters and they're picking out a character and they're thinking, um, which of these white guys I'm gonna be, like they might not, they might be at a point in their life where it doesn't, it's just the next thing, where it's not going to be like, oh, I got to talk about this with my therapist again this week because I got another board game and there's no black people in it. Like I don't think it's like that, but which I don't think you're saying, but I think
right,
imagine opening that box and being pleasantly surprised
right,
that is there, and I would be remiss to point out, like, Jelly Bean Games is fantastic with this. Red Raven Games, Ryan Walkett's artwork has black
yes,
people, it has white people, it's got birds, it's got lizards, it's got, it is that the world he has built is fantastic. And that not all the humans in it are just white. That's not the default in his world for humans, which is really great. And so I think it's, you can't, you can't, but it's hard to find some of those companies that are continually doing this over and over again. And so I think being able to open that box and be pleasantly surprised, I think is an uptick in the right direction, for the hobby, definitely.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to look at my shelf. I'm not seeing. Got this game about Kenny G. He's white, though, I think.
I was thinking about Charterstone. Charterstone has, I believe, a pretty diverse cast of characters that you can choose from
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah. Although you
and
don't know it, it's in the tuck
Yeah,
boxes
it's
sometimes.
random. Like
Okay.
I think I'm playing a black woman in the game,
Okay.
Cool.
and I didn't even think anything of it. I was like, cool. I created a backstory in my head for everything. That must have been so cool for somebody to like open that up and see that. I'm sure that made someone's day.
I'm sure. Yeah, and I think, me and I know other people are different, but I generally, like, when I was playing through Near and Far, I picked a white guy. Like, that was my character. But I know my wife picked the lizard, one of the lizard kin people. So like some people are able to put themselves in like the character, like in that role. Maybe I'm just not quite as creative or able to kind of separate myself. But I often find myself just picking the white guy because I think that's who I am most, that's who I am, and that's who I am most familiar with. Sometimes I get bummed out because I always play blue, and so I get bummed out when the blue character is only female, or like I still play blue because that's more important to me to make sure in my head to make sure I'm moving the right pieces. But it's still annoying. Like, why not just like in Role Player where the other side of the board is a female?
Yes.
I think that's awesome. They did it with the dragons. Like one side is I don't know which side is the male dragon and which side is the female dragon. They didn't mark it.
That's
You
cool
know,
too.
but there's still two sides to all of them. Like games with like character cards or whatever, you flip it over, on the other side is male and female. You know, like maybe one of them is black and one of them's white or something like that. There was another game I just played, the what was that called? It was one of those Target exclusive games. It was like a deduction game and you're robbing people. Oh, what was it called? But it had really great diversity. It had all sorts of different races, also male and female, all sorts of stuff. I can't remember what it was called. It was really good though. Oh, Shifty Eyed Spies. Shifty Eyed Spies. It had, you would have never thought you'd buy that game at Target. The box was blue and green, but when you open it up, that was probably a game that really made some people's day when they opened it up and saw who was in it.
Yeah.
And I think that means a lot.
Absolutely. And I think even what you were saying about like, yeah, I play the white male because, you know, that's who you identify with. That's the thing. I think people sometimes feel like, well, you know, should I feel guilty about that or whatever? It's like, no, like that's okay. It's okay to want to play those characters. We're just saying let's also include other characters that other people want to play as, you know.
You know, and if I opened a game and there were no white guys in it, I'll still play it. And you know, I'm not going to take to the internet and you know, blast this game, put this game on blast because everything's too PC now and there's no white guys in this game. And I'm a white guy and I bought this game, that somebody should look like me. Because I can also think on the other side that how many other people have bought other games where there were only that in it. So I mean, it feels like a little thing to be able to do that. And I loved whenever I was talking to Taniya Walker from Jelly Bean Games about it, that whenever she's just designing her games, she almost does sort of like a diversity quota in her mind. Like, I want this game to be representative of the population. The population is this percent white, this percent black, this percent Asian, like she goes down half male. She even says 50% of my characters will be male, 50% of my characters will be female. Even if only men play my game, half of my characters will be female. You know, like she just straight up says that from the beginning. And I think I just think that's really wonderful because there's going to be something in there that you can see in yourself. And even in a game like Village Pillage where you're not a character, you have a deck of cards that you're playing cards, but you're constantly seeing people that look different. You're constantly, you know, seeing some people that look like you and a lot of people that don't, more people that don't look like you. And I think, you know, that's only for the better. So.
Agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, answering the call out. And where can people find you?
You're welcome. This was a lot of fun. I will say, as a white guy, I know some people think that only Black people or only people in minority groups talk about this stuff, and I think I do think it is important to hear that, you know, there's allies on this side of the table as well. Yeah. And so that's one of the reasons I answered the call. And I think it's important. I know you had Mick and Starla on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we did.
And I love that conversation. They're really great people. I know this summer for my summer spotlights that I'm doing with publishers, I'm trying to find as many, you know, women and people of color and trying to amplify their voices because I think that's really important right now. So, but yeah, so I do on Instagram under at Jordan Plays Blue, also on YouTube at Jordan Plays Blue. I do reviews every week. I do 3 reviews a week on Instagram, and I do really just a monthly video on YouTube. If you subscribe, you'll forget about it, and it'll be a nice surprise once a month. But you should subscribe on Instagram. Give away some games here and there. I'm doing these weekly summer spotlights for publishers. So each publisher will get a week, and I only cover their games and look at some upcoming games as well. So that's a lot of fun. Some upcoming publishers. I have Game Right. I got 21st Century Games. I'm trying to look at my pile over there. BoardGameTables.com. Deepwater Games. All sorts of stuff. It's a great summer. So you should follow me so you don't miss it.
Yes, Jordan is doing a lot. I know that.
am.
I'm seeing it. Yes.
Yeah.
This is actually the last installment for now of the BLM and Pride segments that we've been doing. And we had a few people reach out to us. We've recorded with all of them now, which is awesome. And we might bring it back. We might do another Pride one just to even it out. We did two BLM, and now maybe we need one more Pride one, but that'll be later. Just before we head out, I just want to say I'm going to be taking a brief hiatus for the rest of July. I have this thing I've got to take care of at the end of the month, but I will be back in full swing in August. Until then, Justin will be taking over.
It's mine.
It is, yeah. He's just going to do whatever he wants. It's going to be great. I'm not worried at
Oh.
all. But you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at This Is Room 51. You can also check out our Twitch channel at Room 51 Live, where we stream all things board gaming. But until then, this is Room 51.